We ain't got next. We got now. We ain't coming no more. We here. We trained all off-season for this moment.
It's go time, baby.
We back. This place is gonna rock.
60 minutes or as long as it takes. You leave it on the field.
They're just going to make the conference even stronger.
We're going to see a lot of unexpected things happen.
He's walking into the gold standard of college football.
Hell yeah!
One of the great traditions in college football. Legacy is being built in these games.
What a highlight.
These are the moments that we wish for.
Y'all know what time it is.
So soon. Georgia is the top team in the preseason top 25 for the second straight year. The Bulldogs are one of 4 SEC teams in the top 10, with 4 others coming from the Big Ten, including the defending champs, Michigan, at number 9. And with that, we welcome in the mouth of the South, Paul Finebaum, to the program. Paul, I'm going to start with you. Which current top 10 team will finish the season unranked?
Florida State. First of all, they have no business being in the top 10. They have a difficult schedule. They have Florida State has Miami and Notre Dame within a 3-week period on the road. They end the season with Florida, which is a debatable team. But I think they're going to get caught in the run-of-the-mill ACC game this year, which they did not encounter last year. They lost the guts of their defense. They have a quarterback who has certainly been around and remains a question mark. And I think they also have a hangover. I think they used up too many tears crying about not getting in the playoffs, and that may slow them down a little bit this year.
So Paul, while you might be somewhat correct on this statement, have you not learned anything over the last calendar year about going at Florida State?
And their fan base.
Can we not have this happen? We haven't even kicked off. You're already on Florida State again. We're going to give Florida State their top 10 recognition on a remarkable season they had a year ago. I'm not going to go with the Florida State Seminoles because I think Mike Norvell has that program in a good spot, even though you may or may not be incorrect. I don't want my Twitter going that place again. What I will say is that I think Michigan is going to be the team that they come in ranked 9th. I don't know that necessarily they're going to fall out of the top 25, but I could see them being down between 20 and 25 by the end of the season. It's just too much to ask for a couple of reasons. One, Sharon Moore takes over for Jim Harbaugh, and as we know, inherits a situation with the NCAA investigating. That's a lot of pressure to put on a first-year head coach, although he was the interim last year. The second thing is Jim Harbaugh built that thing for last year. His entire stay at Michigan was for last year in the national championship. J.J. McCarthy, gone. Blake Corum, gone. A number of offensive linemen, 6 guys that got playing time last year are gone. And I just think, for me, from Michigan, while they still have a really, really good defense, they lost a lot of guys from that team a year ago, I think it's just a lot to ask for a season and a program that was built for last year's national championship to sustain any type of success until they get their feet underneath them and find out what exactly the Sharon Moore era is going to be.
So I actually tend to agree with you, Matt. However, I'm going to go Penn State. I'm going to stay in the Big Ten, and I'm going to go Penn State on this. I love James Franklin, so I don't even want to do this. And I also felt like outside of the top 10 was maybe a little more fair than completely unranked, but here we are. For one, no team outside of Michigan or Ohio State has won the Big Ten in the last 7 years, and that last team was Penn State back in 2016, I believe. Oregon is probably the team that wasn't already a tried and true Big Tenner that maybe could come in and win it this year. And then you look at the Pac-12 last year, Washington won that. I feel like Penn State's pretty far down the line. In addition to that, when you look at what Penn State has done against the rest of the top 10, they were 3-17 against all those teams over the last couple of years. It's not a good track record, and Penn State had only 1 pass over 20 yards against Ohio State or Michigan last year. I just don't feel like they're coming for the rest of the Big Ten or the rest of the top 10 in this case. And so for me, unfortunately, I would have to say Penn State is just not going to be in the conversation when all is said and done.
Shay, you know I love you. But if I look at the Big Ten and Paul, this is kind of like an episode of the Matt Barrie Show on the ESPN College Football YouTube channel. By the way, subscribe and listen. Look, Penn State to me, and Paul, this is just me, I think Penn State, outside of Oregon and Ohio State, is the most talented team in the Big Ten. Drew Aller, he's got to get better. We know that. Katron Allen is a great running back. Nate Singleton's a great running back. They have one of the best offenses in the Big Ten. And I believe, and Paul, you may disagree with this, I think the 12-team college football playoff was created for Penn State. You can pencil Penn State in for 10-2 this year, and they'll be in the college football playoff. Same with Ole Miss. I think Penn State is just that team that couldn't get over the Ohio State-Michigan hump, which, by the way, not a lot of people can. I mean, the schedule, that West Virginia game's a big one, but Paul, I think Penn State is looking at a college football playoff.
Now, hold on. If you look at that schedule, you like USC, you like Ohio State, and so then you're going to put Penn State as the third Big Ten team to make the college football playoff?
They miss Michigan this year, so they'll lose to Ohio State. They do that every year. That's one loss. Then the West Virginia game at West Virginia is tough. I think USC shouldn't even be ranked. That's an 11-1 schedule. That's an 11-1 schedule. They're getting to the college football playoff.
Okay. It's 11-1 schedule. Let's talk after week 4.
Okay. Paul, what are your thoughts about Penn State?
Shay, I agree with Matt here, and the only thing that disappoints me about this whole conversation is that he didn't go with Florida State. For those folks at home who don't know the story, the Florida State people literally stood outside Matt's house with pitchforks after he had the nerve to block them out. And by the way, Matt, I was right with you, but nobody could get to my house because they were too busy at yours. But as far as Penn State, James Franklin is a good coach. He's not an elite coach. He's not a great coach. But he can go 10-2 with that schedule and maybe be on the cut line of getting into the playoffs.
Obviously, the defending national champions, Matt thinks that they're not going to be ranked in the top 25 or could be at the bottom of the top 25. What are your thoughts about what Moore can do at Michigan State this year? Michigan this year. Yeah, don't get them confused. Sorry, Michigan this year.
Christina, I'm more upbeat on Michigan. I think their season is going to be defined by one game, and that's the September 7th matchup against Texas, which lost its best running back the other day. And I think Texas going in there with all the hullabaloo could be a very dangerous moment. So if Michigan can steal that game, I know that sounds crazy with the defending champion, but that's the reality with where Texas is ranked. I think then they have a chance. I don't see them beating Ohio State as much as Ryan Day will try to choke that game. I don't see that happening. I think they could drop another game very easily, probably against Oregon. But I think ultimately they can navigate the rest of the schedule if they beat Texas.
Paul, see, and my thing with Michigan, when you saw what Jim Harbaugh was able to do, 3 consecutive Big Ten championships, they beat Ohio State 3 years in a row, which is why Ryan Day's on this mythical hot seat, which is a whole other conversation for another day because it's not even worth the air. What I think now, Paul, the difference with Michigan is Jim Harbaugh had this thing at such a high level to get to that national championship. Is the program that he left behind a sustainable championship contender like an Alabama and what Nick Saban left behind for Kalen DeBoer? Now you're talking about an all-time great Nick Saban. I just think the fall off now with where Harbaugh had that thing trending to where they enter this season, I just think it's going to take some time to get back to where Harbaugh had it based on the departures and everything that went with it.
But the thing I like about Sharon Moore is he is tested. He has experience being in charge of that program, thanks to Jim Harbaugh last year. Now, unfortunately for Michigan, they can't bring Jim Harbaugh back every single week as the honorary captain, as they're going to do the first week, to spit in the eyes of the NCAA, which I think we all agree is pretty cool. Matt, he's part of that program. The players love him. You saw all that last year, whether you embraced it or not. So I think he has a leg up, as opposed to, you mentioned Kalen DeBoer, who's coming in, even though he has a great record, he does not have the experience that Sharon Moore has in sitting in Jim Harbaugh's seat.
Hey, yeah, look, it's going to be fascinating because I truly believe this, Shay, and as we talk about Paul, whether he wants to believe it or not, none of us were on the college football playoff selection committee. But for the 12-team playoff to be where it is right now, I legitimately believe, even though Georgia's the dominant number 1, the whole thing's wide open. I can make an argument.
Georgia was the dominant number 1 last year.
I can make an argument for 6 teams win the national championship.
Yeah. And it will be interesting to see, sorry, Christine, with the expanded playoff now, too. Does 2 losses still get you in?
Yes.
Is it still a 1 loss? Right. Like, how is that going to be judged this year, especially in the different conferences?
Paul, were you the one guy who voted for Colorado yesterday? Because, I mean, they got 1 vote, and now you got to deal with it.
Dang well it wasn't him.
Is that you?
Yeah. Being first take, I'm surprised we didn't have an entire 2-hour show today praising Coach Prime for completely dumping on the local media, the media that shows up every day at his practices to support him. And we don't have enough time, so I won't bother talking about how disgraceful it was and what a terrible look. I'll save that for Matt Barrie's podcast.
There you go. Again, ESPN College Football YouTube channel.
We will watch it. Don't you worry. Week 0
your
is just
platform.
11. I know. I don't know why you keep
What
plugging
is
stuff.
happening here?
Sports Center, also your
awesome.
show.
Good
It's
stuff.
great.
Yeah, Thursday
Great
night
seeing you,
player.
Paul. Week 0 is just 11 days away.
Got a cigarette.